On November 13, 1909, in Cherry, Illinois, the cherry mine caught on fire. This resulted in deaths of 259 men and boys. This disaster improved laws and safety regulations.
In the late 1800s and early 1900s, the fight for reform spread across the nation of the United States like wildfire. The American Industrial Revolution began in the 1870s and continued throughout World War II. The Industrial Revolution led to improved wages, migration from rural areas to urban areas, and enhanced transport networks. While there are many benefits of the revolution, there are also various drawbacks, including food shortages and unsanitary living conditions.
In the 1900s, about 18% of workers in America were children. Roughly 27,000 children already worked in mines across the U.S., despite the various child labor laws that had already been enacted. This was because children were able to do things adults couldn't, such as fitting into tight spaces while also being paid less than adults, which saved the employers and companies money. Many families also needed money, so they sent their children off to work. In 1903, Illinois passed the 1903 Child Labor Act. The minimum working age for mining was 16 years old, and the maximum working hours for a miner was 8. In the midst of it all, located in Cherry, Illinois, a mine caught on fire. This devastation brought many impacts to Illinois and the rest of America as well.
The Cherry Mine opened in 1905 and was run by the St. Paul Coal Company. Many were attracted as the labor was consistent throughout the year, unlike other mines who closed down this summer, leaving miners without a job. This meant more money could be provided to a miner and their family. These miners came from many European countries, such as Austria, Scotland, Yugoslavia, and many other mining towns in America.
Working as a miner was described as tough, tedious, dirty, and backbreaking. To do this work results in the degrading of a man, Lance quoted. He was a 60-year-old miner. Many people get sick because of lots of dust. They become discouraged and hopeless. Miners wore canvas mining hats and skull guard helmets. The Cherry Mine was deemed to be the safest coal mine made and thought of to be the largest coal shaft. It was modern and safe with the equipment along with construction. It was said to be fireproof as it was built with steel, concrete, brick, and stone. It had been one of the only mines in America to have electricity. The Cherry Mine had only 2 shafts to get in or out of, the hoisting shaft and the air shaft, also known as the escapement shaft. The hoisting shaft ran cages of coal and men only between the surface and the second vein. It was also the bigger of the 2 shafts. The air shaft operated its cages only between the second and third vein.
On November 13, 1909, 481 men went down to the Cherry Mine. The electricity hadn't been working for a couple weeks, so they had to resort to kerosene lamps, which are also considered as oil lamps. At about 1:15 p.m. on the day of the disaster, a coal car that had 6 bales of hay was pushed out of the elevator on the second floor. Robert Deans and Matt Francesco were in charge of sending the car of hay down to the mules. However, instead of doing that, they left the car of hay under an air passageway so they could unload a car which had just come up. Some had said the two had left the car next to a kerosene lamp with the blaze not even a foot away from the hay, while others say the kerosene lamp was directly above the car and kerosene wax was dripping on the hay, soaking it. Normally, cut and compressed hay wouldn't burn, but these 6 bales of hay did.
As some miners were leaving the mine, they saw the cart of hay on fire but did not do anything about it as it was a common occurrence to have a small fire in the mines. When the fire was discovered by Robert Deans, Matt Francesco, and Alex Rosenjack, they proceeded to dump the cart of hay down into the third vein. Once in the third vein, they managed to extinguish the fire.
Unfortunately, the second vein was already on fire. There were multiple attempts to put it out. There were signals to reverse the fan and turn it off in order for the smoke to leave the mine. However, this did not work because when the fan was reversed, it drew the flames in its directions. The fan cut off any means of escape from the third to the second vein using the third vein hoisting shaft. There were other attempts to put the fire out with the water from a hose located inside of the mine, but it had been unsuccessful due to the immense heat. When the people of Cherry heard about the fire, they rushed to the scene. Many women, children, and men were terrified what would happen to their loved ones.
12 heroic men went down into the mines in an attempt to save any remaining miners who survived the accident. These next clips are videos of a group of authors who wrote Cherry Mine discussing the disaster.
It's just amazing. Titanic was called the world's safest ship. Cherry Mine was called the world's safest mine. It was doomed for disaster with that statement. But anyhow, when I read about it a little bit more and studied it, and wanted to talk a little bit more about the 12 heroes, the 12 people. A lot of them were townspeople after the disaster whistle blew and the escape shaft was sealed off, leaving the main shaft the only way in or out of the mine. There was no other way to save more people but to go down in that mine and just pull them out by hand. 12 men, John Bundy, the mine manager, and 11 others went down 6 times with nothing more than wet rags over their faces, 6 times down a chimney that was about 300 feet deep, smoke coming out of it.
As said from the video, they made 6 successful trips pulling up miners from the mine. Unfortunately, on the 7th, there was a miscommunication with the signals between the mine hoisting engineer who was pulling up the cages and the men. He didn't pull up the cage until it was too late. All 12 men were dead at the scene. They were burned alive before they were pulled up. Many witnesses at the scene were hysterical and sobbing.
Once word had gotten out to the world, thousands came to the mine yard at Cherry. Many of the bodies were charred and severely burned when they were taken out of the mine. To identify the bodies of a relative or friend, they searched for scraps of clothing, wedding rings, and other objects.
After November 13th, the mines were sealed but were later reopened. There were other attempts to find bodies or any remaining survivors. Each time they went down, they wore oxygen masks to protect themselves from the black damp. On the 8th day, a group of rescuers found 20 miners who were still alive by sealing themselves off from the black damp. Not long after, the mines were sealed once again.
Hundreds were struck with grief. Many families lost the breadwinners of their family and now had no source of income. They were given about $1,800 each. Many things were donated to these families. The United States Express donated warm clothes, shoes, and garments. The J.R. Bears Bros donated an abundance of food, including 20 cases of corn and beans, 5 barrels of flour, 3 barrels of sausage, 1,000 loaves of bread, and more.
The Cherry Mine disaster crossed the frontier as it changed many laws and regulations. Illinois legislation created the Illinois Worker Compensation Law, which allowed miners and their families to be compensated for injuries and death caused by the employer's negligence.
The Illinois legislature immediately approved safety regulations by requiring mine owners to purchase and maintain fire equipment. When a mine was to be constructed, the shafts could not be close together because if one caught on fire, there is a higher chance of the other catching on fire as well, if it is too close to the other shaft. In addition, both exits of a mine could not be sealed. In the town of Cherry, 3 mine rescue stations were created on February of 1911.
The St. Paul Coal Company pled guilty to 9 counts of child labor violations. They were fined $630. There were 10 boys working in the mine and 4 of them had died in the fire. After it was concluded that the mine company was solely responsible for the disaster, the union demanded to enforce child labor laws. Creating the U.S. Bureau of Mines in 1910, Congress also passed national child labor laws. As said by Scholastic magazine, the Fair Labor Standard Act of 1938 was a result of the Cherry Mine disaster. On Saturday, June 25, 1938, President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed the bill. It banned child labor and set the minimum hourly wage to 25 cents and the maximum hours of working to 44 hours.
Even after the fire had been known, miners were still told to work as it didn't seem that big of a deal at first. David Wright, one of the survivors, said, "It was just about 1:30 in the afternoon when the fire started and was considerably after 2 o'clock when we were told of it down in the second vein. Alexander Rosenjack came down then and told Norberg, the boss in that vein, and even then, Norberg did not turn in a general alarm. If he had, I feel that every man in that vein would have gotten out alive." The Cherry Mine disaster was a tragic event that cost the lives of 259 men and boys and impacted the lives of countless others. The Cherry Mine disaster crossed the frontier for workplace safety, directly causing an increase in federal oversight on mine safety by forcing many states to enact laws and safety regulations.